it really started with you and Mac. Uh, Finally understanding what I was combating was very helpful, and getting the right
Mm,
treatment was very helpful. We all still have those struggles, and we all still
sure.
wake up with things, and we deal with things on a daily basis.
Welcome to Fearfully and Wonderfully Me, a podcast for women on leadership and life skills with Rhea Story.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We've had a little bit of a break with podcast episodes. Mike and I have been on the road and fairly busy this fall, and so just naturally took a break from recording. So excited to be getting back to things, and super excited because I have a special guest today. Tanner, thank you so much for joining.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's a privilege. You know, one of the things I love on this podcast is um, sharing other people's stories, because I know I certainly find inspiration when I hear somebody else's story and I learn from that. And I think it's important because all of us face adversity in life, and it's just a question of how do we come out the other side of that. And so that's one of the things I love to do, is just share those stories and examples of people who faced adversity and said, you know what, I'm going to be better because of it. And what I love, and we'll get into the details here as we go, but what I love is that you've taken sort of that adversity and then turned it into a passion and a mission for helping others. So super excited to drill down into a little bit about that. So maybe just give us a little bit of the highlights of your background and your story, and as much as you feel comfortable sharing, and let's just get into that, and then how you've turned that into a mission and fueled that for purpose and passion.
Yeah, so I guess for me, let's just jump right into it. So, I grew up pretty hard. It was a pretty rough life when I was young. My mom went away to the Navy, and she left us with her
Mm,
dad my dad when I was like 14 months old. My
wow.
father was an alcoholic, and he was pretty abusive. I love my father, but I don't really speak to him much. But he had his issues. He had some generational trauma that he carried with him, and he
Mm,
brought that into the relationship with my stepmother and my mother. And so that was really hard growing up that way. And then, you know, the beatings were something. Um,
mm,
but it's hard to put it into words, because it's like, how do you express an emotion that you felt when you were so little? You think of things differently now that you're an adult, and you see things in a different manner, and where when you were younger you saw it as pain and you didn't see it as a lesson. And sometimes lessons in life are the hardest lessons. But um, growing up with him was no cakewalk. It was kind of walking on eggshells most of the time. And
mm,
so, um, throughout that journey, and I won't dig too much into the my early years, but you know, growing up in that house, and then who was around us when we were kids, and it was me and my sister and my stepbrother. And there was a point in time, I think I was about 6 years old, where I think it was the first time that I was molested. I think
mm,
that was pretty difficult. You think about that stuff, and you think about the people that have access to you, or the people that are allowed access, and you wonder, how that is. But when you have people that are living with generational trauma, and they're trying to navigate their own life, um,
mhm,
they have a tendency to allow things because they don't see clearly, and they don't see clearly what they're allowing into their own lives, which is allowing it into your life. Um, so, that was tough. I started acting out after that. I think I was 6 years old the first time it happened. Um, and I started acting out quite a bit, getting into trouble, things like that, not listening, and then, you know, getting in trouble in school and doing different things when you're younger. And then, then it happened again, when I was like 11 or 12. Different,
mm,
different, different person. but once again, it's just what was allowed into our lives when we were that young, and it's not just my struggle, and I can't speak about my stepbrother or my sister's struggles. I
Sure.
know what their struggles were, but I won't speak about those. But it's not like I was alone in this. I
Mhm.
think it finally came to a head when there was some violence, and I won't talk about that violence, but it involved a gun, and it involved my
Mm.
father and me, and so it kind of came to a head. I ended up in foster care. Um, Foster home was good; they were good people, but by that time, I was so damaged,
Mm.
that it's like, you do the best you can for somebody, but it's almost like when somebody is too far gone, you know. And I think
Mhm.
at that age, I was just barely a teenager, and so there wasn't really any place for me to go. So I ended up in like group homes and boys' homes, and I guess your definition of an orphan, you know.
Mm.
Um, And then when I was 17, I was emancipated as an adult. And what emancipation is basically it says you're not 18, you're not an adult, but the state is going to deem you an adult and you're going to take care of yourself. Well, that doesn't
Mm.
happen unless if you have a safe place to go to, you know. They don't do
Right.
that just for
Right.
everybody. So I ended up having to get my GED when I was in a placement so that I could get out and be emancipated and get out on my own. Um, while I was in those places, I ran away from them a lot. They were pretty violent places to be.
Mhm.
When you're in any kind of lockup facility, and I wasn't in there because I was a big troublemaker. I was what they called a China, which was a child in need of assistance.
Mhm.
Then they had adjudicated kids that went through the judicial system that got in trouble. So I was kind of mixed in with all of that.
Mm.
And
Not a great
when you're
environment for sure.
no, and when you're mixed in with that, survival kicks in, and so you
Mhm.
live in survival. I mean, you know what that's like, but when you're living in survival mode, you're not really thriving, you're just getting by.
Right.
And so for years, I was just getting by. It was when you get emancipated and you're deemed an adult, it doesn't mean that you are an adult. It doesn't mean you think like one. It doesn't mean that that you have it figured out or you have it solved. It's quite the opposite. It's you can take two you can take two children and you can give one a really good life and you can raise them right and you can bring them up right, and they'll start at such a higher level in life than if you take a kid and you abuse him and you leave him to his own devices. And so that when you become an adult, when it's time for you to be on your own, um, you start from such a disadvantage that you don't understand how big of a disadvantage you're starting from.
Mm.
Um, Now, that breeds resilience. Don't get me wrong. You learn how to be resilient. Um, you learn how to fend for yourself and do things for yourself. Um, but that's kind of a double-edged sword, because when you get used to doing things for yourself, you don't accept help from people. And
Mm.
so
That's a good point.
I lived most of my life just not accepting any help from anybody because you don't trust people, and that's where that trust, and I'll get into that a little bit, but um, you just don't trust anybody because everybody that was supposed to be an authority figure in your life has hurt you in a manner, or has not paid attention enough, or you start to really think about you know those people that were meant to protect you, and it can harden you and it can make you angry and it can get you really upset. And if you live in that, then you're doing yourself a disservice
Mm.
to have to it's hard to put into words. I talk a lot, but it's hard when you talk about this stuff because it's so near and dear to you. And I think that's why I started Mission Ascending Phoenix. Was I think I was 44 finally. I'm 46 now, so this has only been 2 years ago. But I was 44 when I was diagnosed with C-PTSD, and if anybody that doesn't know what that is,
Yeah, share a
it's
little bit.
PTSD. It's PTSD, but it's got that word complex in front of it,
Mm,
and it's what it lends itself to. It's very complex. It just means that you have PTSD, but you also have accompanying symptoms with it, and that can happen when you have distrust for authority figures and stuff like that. Um, and it comes with other things, like some people disassociate. I mean, there are a myriad of things that can come along with CPTSD. Um, but finally understanding what I was combating was very helpful, and getting the right
mm,
treatment was very helpful. Um, you, I was the person that was like, I was so distrustful that I didn't even trust therapies. I didn't trust therapists. I didn't trust medicine. I didn't
mm-hmm,
trust any, because I didn't trust people to have my best interest at heart. And so that's something that I've had to work on, especially the last couple of years. Now, I've worked on it my whole life because I trusted my wife and I trust my kids, and, I love them. And it's something I've worked on my whole life, but the last couple of years has been probably the most intense work that I've done. Um, it really started with you and Mac. Uh, we I was working for a company at the time that sent me to a lean consortium where you and Mac were, and
mm-hmm,
I was there just for business purposes. I thought this is going to give me a leg up, you know.
right.
And but what I got was questions. I got more questions than I got answers. And so I went out to try to answer those questions.
Mm,
Um, and then hearing you speak and then hearing Mac speak, because I got into it after that, and I talked about that with Mac a little bit, how that
yeah, you
happened and how
you
that
got on a
all went
growth
down, and
journey.
how
I
I
mean,
had his books and put them away.
yeah.
Yeah, it's and but it's small steps, right? I think
Mm-hmm,
everybody thinks that you have this big aha moment, and all of a sudden one day you're a certain way and the next day you're just changed. It's like some miraculous thing happened. That does happen, I think, to people, but for me, it was slow. It was over
mm,
time. It took baby steps, you know, to trust again and to do those types of things enough to let people help you, and that's really what I want to tell people is, at some point you have to trust someone. You have to trust
mm-hmm,
somebody to be able to say, this person's got at least in this manner, has my best interest at heart. Because I never had that. It's why I started Mission Ascending Phoenix. It's the nonprofit. It's just me. It's
yeah.
my
So
nonprofit, and I'm trying to
tell us more. Yeah, tell us more about what you do with
I'm
that.
trying to
And
grow it. Um, yeah, I'm trying to grow it. So Mission Ascend Phoenix, I put that together out of my own pain, out of my own life experiences. It was, um, I really rejected all of the help that I'd ever been given in life, and I didn't see it as help. Um, and that really put me in a bad spot in my life, because there are lots of people that wanted to help me, and I just kind of refused it. And when I accepted the help, when I finally accepted it, and it was kind of like, it was hard. It was hard to trust
mm,
people. It was hard. The whole thing has been, um, it's been amazing, but it's been very difficult at the same time, because you're
mm-hmm,
learning as you go.
mm,
There's no real playbook. I can go on and I can come onto your show and I can say, well, I've done all of these things, and it's all great and I'm all great. But at the same time, we're all people and we struggle on a daily basis, whether we're on a podcast, or we're, a division manager, or whatever we are as people, we all still have those struggles, and we all still
Sure.
wake up with things, and we deal with things on a daily basis. Um, and I made the big mistake of thinking that I needed to be perfect, to change. And I think a lot of people do. I think they think that they need to be perfect. And so that's very demoralizing when you think, I can't make a mistake.
Hmm.
And I want people to get help. And in Mission Ascending Phoenix, what it does is we help people. We walk with them. People have called me, and I can't get a job, or, I'm stuck in prison, and, what do I do when I get out? You know, and it's kind of, it's heartwarming, because you get to a point where people are seeing the things that you've done in your life, and they're asking you, can you help me do the same thing?
Hmm.
That's, I get choked up a little bit about it, because it just touches my heart.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And sorry, but
No.
we get, when we talk to people, and we try to guide them on, what steps to take. We try to let them know that you don't have to be perfect.
Hmm.
Um, that it's a journey. It takes time. Um,
Sure.
there's going to be there's going to be so many little things that you're going to have to do to get where you want to go. And those things could include therapy. It could include medication. It could include those things. And you have to be open to those things. And how do you get people to be open to those things? Well, you have to talk to them. You listen. You listen to what they're going through. You have empathy for people. Um, I'm a talker, so I have a hard time sometimes listening as opposed
Right.
to talking. But I've learned through this process that listening is the best tool. People
Mm,
want to be heard.
absolutely. And I always like to say healing is messy. I think a lot of times we don't appreciate that it's not a linear journey. It is messy and it is work, right? Trying to overcome trauma and do the work to heal, it is work. And there are days when you don't feel like putting the work in, putting the effort in. And it's so much easier to go back to just surviving, right? Instead of trying to overcome and trying to thrive. But at the end of the day, it's so worth it because you get to that point where you are able to look back and help somebody else and walk through that journey. And yeah, that's absolutely a calling in and of itself, for sure.
It is a calling. It really is. And it's kind of like I was trying to figure out uh, something that would symbolize or embody what we were as an organization, as
Hmm.
who I am as a person. Um, and I have a picture on my website where it's like there's a bunch it's like there's a bunch of people, they're reaching out, it's like they're burning, and then there's one guy, and there's fire around it. There's one guy that's been through that fire, and
Mm,
he's reaching back down, you know because I think that's what we're obligated to do. I think we're obligated that when we go through something and we figure out a way through it, that we help other people. And so that's all I've been trying to do with Mission Ascending Phoenix, is help other people in any way that I can. Um, and yeah, no, it's been a tough journey. And I get teared up when I talk about it because it's important to me.
mm,
These things, they're not just fleeting things that, here one day and gone tomorrow. It's like when when you finally figure out why you're here, what you're meant for, it's moving, and
it is.
it can be overwhelming. And I think that those are all good emotions. It's all good emotions. I mean, people that say that guys don't cry, they're they're lying to themselves, you
Ah,
know?
sure.
we do. And we care. And, you know, I think it can be really easy to um, say that, you know, guys are uncaring, they're unfeeling, they don't
Mm,
share their innermost thoughts. I think we do. I think we share them to the people that we love and that we care about. And I think that for I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, it's like stepping out on a big limb to come on to these shows and talk. But I
sure.
know that it's necessary.
It's
Um,
hard to be vulnerable,
there,
right? I mean, it,
there are other
and I'm
people. I'm not alone.
there are.
You know, I've talked to some of the guys that I came up with, and I've spoken to them recently, and I love to see the kids or the grown men, the kids that I grew up with in these homes. I love to
Mm,
see them making things of themselves. I love to see them pushing past achieving their goals. And there's one guy in particular that I was pretty close with, and everybody, when you're that age and when you go through that stuff, you hear things like you'll never amount to anything, you'll never
mm,
be anything. Um, you'll be lucky to not be in prison. You'll be lucky to be alive. They tell you things like that quite often,
mhm.
um, or they used to anyway. So when I see people come out of that, and when I see people come up and do well for themselves, it's very enlightening to me.
Oh,
But
yeah.
and once again, it's the reason that I started it, because I started Mission Ascending Phoenix. It's because I've seen it happen. I've done it. I've seen other people do it, but I've also been on the spectrum where, on the other side, where I didn't feel like it was possible at one point in time. I didn't know how I was going to get there. I didn't know the way through. I was just like the blind leading the blind. I was just navigating in the dark for so many years. And then when you
Mm,
finally get the content and you get stuff like your content and Mac's content and everybody else that I've been reading and trying to learn from, you feel a sense of obligation to kind of help people through that too. And that's what we want to do. We also want to get materials into the hands of health professionals so that they know how to spot it. You know, when somebody has trauma and when they have complex trauma, they're probably not going to want to talk to just anybody.
mm,
Or
sure.
I think a lot of times, and it's a generational trauma thing, but a lot of people that have had things like you have or that I've had, um, when they're not far enough along, or when they're at a spot in their journey, they don't feel like they can talk to anybody except for people that were just like them.
Right.
You know,
Sure.
they feel like they need to have a bond or a connection. They need to feel like that somebody understands what they went through. And when they feel like somebody doesn't understand what they went through, they haven't experienced it, they're like, how can you understand? How could you possibly imagine the depths
Mhm.
of depravity that I've seen?
Right.
And
Sure.
so we're obligated. You and I, we're obligated. We don't have a choice. There's no choice. It's what you do because it's what has to be done.
Mm,
You know, you talked about waking up in the morning and doing things, um, in spite of. And there are mornings when I wake up and I don't want to. You know,
mhm.
I'm like everybody else. There's nothing different about me than the person next door or the person down the street. There are days when I don't want to. The only difference is that I push through it.
Mm.
It's that resilience when you can push through not wanting to do things.
Yeah, absolutely. Tanner, you talked about books, and I know you, because I was looking at your website just this morning, and you've got some resources on there. And it was interesting
Mhm.
because one of the books you talk about as a resource is The Body Keeps the Score, which I too found to be just an incredible resource, and it helped me understand that I was normal in some of my reactions and responses to trauma, and so that was good. But are there any other books or resources that have stand out as powerful on your journey? I definitely want to leave some of our those who are listening or those who are watching with some
Yeah.
resources, and you have those on the website, but are there others that stand out?
Yeah, there's some other ones. Like I have one right now. It's called here, let me go grab it really quick.
Sure.
Yeah. It's called The Power of Discipline. And it
Mm-hmm.
just teaches you different things about what discipline is. And I think everybody thinks that discipline is like authority, but it's not. It's self-authority. And so it talks about not depleting your tank and not putting too much in front of you, and not giving not doing so much that you're depleting all of your discipline, what to focus on, what's important, those types of things. It's like there's a term in manufacturing. It's called eat the frog. And eat the
Yeah.
frog is that one thing that you
Yeah.
don't want to do that you have to do first thing. And so that's what discipline is, right? You wake up every morning and you eat that frog.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what you do. You tackle it and then you move on with your day. And for me, I tackle complex post traumatic stress. That's what I
Yep.
tackle every morning. So I eat the frog every morning, and then I get up and I go out and I go to my job and I try to impact people. I think that being kind is not being weak. I'm very kind, but I am not weak. I think
Mm.
kindness is a virtue, and I think that more people need to be kind. We don't know what other people are going through. And sometimes just a kind word or a smile can really uplift somebody's day. And I know it sounds simple, but when you do it, and I was an angry person a few years ago, very angry. And I didn't understand why there was a problem everywhere I went.
Mm.
But you know
Sure.
why?
Yep.
Because I was the problem,
Yeah.
right? If there's a problem everywhere you go, look in the mirror,
Yeah.
because
It's so
that's
true.
where yeah, that's where you find it. But when I learned that I could change my own mindset,
Mm.
I could control my own thoughts, I could control my feelings, and I learned ways to do those things. I'm able to do whatever I want to in life. And I think it, at the risk of sounding arrogant, there's nothing that I can't do. I believe that in my heart, that whatever I set out to do, I'm going to do. I've been through things in my life, and I've been through things recently, just personally, that have allowed me to understand the strength that I have. And I think that what I would like for more people to understand is the strength that they have. You can
Mm.
feel broken. You can feel separated from everyone and everything, but you have strength. You have power, and I even on the website, I talk about what power means, and knowledge is power, and knowledge is healing. And the more knowledge you gain about who you are, not necessarily what you read in books, yet they help, but gain the knowledge of who you are as a person, and that'll give you all the power you need to do the things that you want to in your life. You know,
Mm. Love that. That's so critical, right? That sense of self-worth, because that's the foundation for self-care and self-discipline and self-development. And so I love that. Tanner, I'm going to put your email up here in case anyone wants to reach out to you, and of course the website. But just as we start to wrap up, are there one big takeaway from this journey that you've gotten onto turning your trauma into passion and purpose for helping others?
yeah, the big takeaway really for me is that this life isn't just mine.
Mm.
Um, I try not to get emotional, but
Oh, emotion is real.
without
Good.
Yeah, without God's help, I don't. It, for me, it just wasn't possible.
Mm,
The one takeaway is that I can't do anything without Him, but I can do all things with Him. And so, when you don't have the strength, and mm, sometimes you don't know the power you have until you hit your knees in tears,
mm, so true.
and it's vague, but if it's like, when there's nothing else, when there's no one else, and it's just you and God alone, and no one's coming to save you. No one. You have to save yourself,
Mm,
and you have to put the work in. The big takeaway is the work. You have to put the work in. You have to put the work into yourself. You have to love yourself enough to put the work in. People do ask me, and I want to help people, but I would say to people that there are many people out there that want to help you, but if you're not willing to put in the work, there's no amount of help that anybody can give you to get you where you want to go.
yeah, I love that. So true, right? We cannot be the victim. It's not waiting on someone or something else to change our lives. It's possible. Life can be better, but we have to do things in order to create that reality and make those dreams come true. So I love that.
You really,
Love that. Um, well, yeah. Well, Tanner, thank you so much for just being willing to share and sharing about Mission Ascending Phoenix and the work that you're doing, and flashing the website up one more time. And then, of course, you welcome people to reach out to you through the website and learn more, or your email. So thank you for being willing to be vulnerable. I certainly know it's not easy to share that story of adversity and the trauma and the impact that it leaves us with, because what we go through impacts us. It doesn't define us, but it influences us. And it's certainly true we're different because of the things we go through in life, but we can be better because of it. But it absolutely is a journey. So thank you so much for being willing to share and be vulnerable.
that's no problem at all. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for listening, or thank you all for watching, and talk to you next time.